Good morning. Today is February the 5th, 10:02 a.m. We're going to cover a couple of different things, mainly tying up some loose ends. But before we do that, I would like to give you a morsel for your mind to suck on for a moment. Not in any way the carnality of what the United States government or even the Israeli government is doing. It's so far out of my concern. But it is something to note. I seen these protesting people, right? We didn't vote for Elon. And they got a problem with a billionaire running pretty much the purse of the country. Well, my only question is, right, when you're looking for an applicant for a job, right, do you go to the person who's less qualified or more qualified? If you have someone who's well qualified to handle billions of dollars, why should you thus then be offended that he was hired for a job to manage billions of dollars? That's all I'm saying, right? Because it would be worth rallying for if you had an ill-equipped leader who was then hiring ill-equipped by leaders, right? Because they were just pals at Yale versus using a fine-tooth comb and looking at all your options and who has the most experience with these things. So regardless of who they are and where they fit into the prophecy and into the storylines and all that, like just looking at it for what it is what it is. I guess I just don't understand the pent-up human frustration with every single choice that's made by somewhere, someplace, something. There's always a group that's gonna go against it, right? It's kind of my thing, you know. And again, a lot of this, right, is that syndrome, right? Imagine the bees that can't produce honey. Well, the bee is going to go find something that's going to become relative to them for a purpose. So this is also an abomination, right? Where human beings are inventing true purposeless purposes because it continues to make them feel relevant within their social circle or within their interpersonal, voice. So I'm just saying, it's kind of stupid, right? But speaking about that, let me look up something for you. But well, it's going to go over a passage, but I was mainly just going to say, you know, Trump is basically breaking out, right, the yellow brick road, and he's trying to pave his way through the Gaza Strip. I don't know exactly how I feel about it. I can tell you one thing, that when the root of evil is removed and all the branches are cut and burned and just the good remain, it's not going to matter if it's Gaza or southern France or East Russia or wherever, right? Mexico, like all these problems are not even associated with necessarily the human element. It is quite literally the fight for the true human to outshine all the impiousness, all the fakeness, and all of the worn garbs of the world, right? Because hinting on also some last videos, and again, I've already been fearing this because this is what I get annoyed with a lot. is I will say something with a meaning and directive and a purpose, but it's heard wrongly, interpreted wrongly, weaponized. And the first question, right? The first question after the RH negative videos is, well, aren't all black people RH negative? Like, it's again back to the race. So that person who asked that question, you're not even on a negative. I can guarantee you, because that's where your mind automatically goes, right? So then you have the black versus white narrative. The black wants reparations from whites. Like, that is so, in today's culture, you would call it low vibing, right? In the heavenly realms and what I would call the God culture, we look at it as very low operating beings. So we look at that as, you know, it's purposeless, it's senseless. Because when you're talking about the negative seed, right, the O negative seed, so think of the earth as an electron, and then you have positive electrons that grab to it, then you have negative electrons that are opposed to it. So if you look at it almost in a molecule way, the positive electrons are stuck on earth, the negative electrons are essentially opposed to earth, because when the power is let go, right, like a magnet, the positives are going to be the magnet to the earth, then the negatives are going to be that opposing magnet, and then when the magnet's turned on, right, their realm is upstairs. So when you're talking about the flesh, I want you to imagine if the original purpose of earth was to have a lower density for myself and my team to be able to have human incarnations at will using the RH negative line. So if you look at that as a hardware, then let's just kind of use it almost like an avatar sequence. So let's say that the RH negatives were the original plan, not to have billions, especially not billions, but enough people in civilization that we, myself, the team, those in the realms and of the heavens, can incarnate into any RH negative being we choose, because it's compatible with us, right? It was created for the purpose of me or the heavenly host using those bodies as vehicles to accomplish something. So this would be like saying I own a large company and I've got, 100 million vehicles, and then I can choose to go into whatever vehicle I want to. So the people that are like, well, aren't all black people RH negative, and isn't the devil white? Like, from up high, you sound like someone who is walking on the car lot trying to make character assumptions and create a narrative based on what these work vans look like. Like, so this white van has a scratch on it. Does that mean that the van constantly crashes into trees, and the van's just the van, well, no, it wouldn't be the van, it would be the driver. So stop talking about the van and look at the driver, because when we're talking about the heavenly seed, right, the O negative seed, for as many sons that came down, right, at least 200, for as many of them who went into the positives, the earthborn, right, the earthborn humanoids, for as many of them who went into them, which in the very beginning, it's fair to even say, right, Neanderthal didn't really have any true white or true black appearance anyway, right? Even their hair was different. So, and that's what I mean, right? When you're talking about the vehicle, it just, what I'm saying is it makes no sense. And when you're thinking about, well, how can this race get up on this person or this people, or like, that's what I mean. Like, if you're in that low vibrational state, or not even vibrational. That's like new age stuff, and I think it's pretty hokey. But if you're looking at the bottommost layer and then trying to find justification for this, or trying to put the foot on another people because of that, then like strike, right? Hit the face, start praying, make amends, empty your heart, because there are just as many negatives that are white, that are black, that are Asian, that are Russian, that are, because truly, right, if you were to look at like what you call hotspots, so northern France technically has the highest concentration of O negative people. So this is mainly those people. They essentially they migrated to like a remote place in France, and they really did, unbeknownst to them, right? They kind of did what the original plan was small communities. These communities thrive, they help one another, they have the proper amount of children to carry on the legacy, and they're all working towards not only their individual purpose but their long-term purpose as well. So um just basically food for thought. So anyway, what else are we going to do here? So I think everyone's pretty hip on the ice storms. Don't think we have to worry about that. And let's see here. Yeah, so pretty much my take on the Gaza Strip. There are good-hearted Palestinians in the world. They're good-hearted Iranians. There are good-hearted Israelis. There are good-hearted Americans, good-hearted Russians, good-hearted Canadians, good-hearted Mexico-Americans, right? So trying to deem a people, that's what I mean, right? Is when you actually remove the flesh, if you were to remove the eyes, it's actually behaviors that people are at war with. And if you're a good seed, if you have purpose and it's all in harmony with creation, everything I've been teaching on so far, then you're going to be appalled at unrighteous behavior, right? Such as, really heavy concentrations of demonic seed, right? Which unfortunately was a lot in Gaza, because remember, like is going to follow like. Um, and people are going to essentially assimilate to the same like, which is also an interesting concept, because when you look at on the surface, right, from a human viewpoint, like the numbers in the physical, right? So the YouTube tells you like how many views or how many likes. That is an incorrect number in the spirit. So these videos are actually more of a marker and a proof in the physical of things I've either already done, am doing, or will do. So these videos are more like an afterburner, right? I got that from Rabbi Steve. I really like Rabbi Steve. But my point is, you know, let's look at that situation, right? You know, let's say person in the congregation, right, is doing unrighteousness, right? He's being sinful. He's, hitting all the wrong sides of the commandments. It doesn't matter if he's white, black, Chinese, Russian, right? It don't matter. It's his behavior that matters, right? That's what we're getting to at the root. Because if you pull that root of evil, which I'm working on, but it's a deep, deep root. And honestly, I'm trying not to rip the root so fast that it just decimates at too fast of a pace, versus trying to surgically remove the root to get it out. Because once you remove the root of evil, then you are being scrubbed of all the unrighteousness. You're being scrubbed of things like greed, of impiety, arrogance, ego, sin of, sin of the flesh, right? Um, False worship, idolatry. And that's another thing. People go, well, Yahweh, you really freak out about idolatry. Like, get over it. It's 2025. No, it's not get over it that it's 2025. It's that I'm trying to heal a spiritual malady, teaching through the eyes of humanity so you can understand what I'm doing. So it truly is a service to you guys. And I'm trying to give the proper perspective to those that indefinitely will be moving forward with me. And I really don't want any uncomfortableness, in any way, right? I mean, if I am out and about in this epoch in time, I don't want people to feel, you know, I don't want people to feel that, like, I don't want people to ever feel like there's salvation for one group of people and not another. Or there is, you know, these people are lower in a genetic formulary than these people, or these people can do more for the kingdom financially than these people, so they get like a head start. Like, that's not ever the case, right? Let's say someone donated, $1 million, right, to my ministry today. What would that be, and what would it be for? Does that person get like an automatic pass into heaven? Absolutely not. Now, in the human world, that's the kind of games humans play, right? Well, I donated $1 million to your campaign, so now you're going to scratch my back when you get in, and you're going to pass this law that's going to help me make my million back with my company. Like, that's all unrighteous. And again, I don't care who, what, where, when it's happening. My concern is that it happens. I don't care if those character traits are tied to Donald Trump. I don't care if they're tied to Barack Obama. I don't care if they're tied to, Richard effing Nixon. I don't care. The person, the flesh, doesn't mean anything to me, right? What you look like only matters in your respective purposes. Because to me, the human body is more of a vehicle, right? It is an image. It is a secondary image of the true image, right? And I don't want to get too far off in the woods, but what I'm saying is I don't want, if anybody's going to go rage, right, I would rather them rage about the truth, rage about the cause, rage about the purpose, rage about not only am I here, right, but nay, almost anybody can understand me or hear me, right? Because anytime someone is listening to these videos or reading a write or anything like that, right, almost nobody can still make the connection that I am truly who I am, right? Like, I'm not like sitting here BSing anybody, because at the end of the day, right, even if I don't do anything other than, stay in the abode with the family, and if that's like pretty much the end all be all, right? I'm still working every day, every night, 24/7, 365. I don't even really sleep, to be quite honest. Like, I don't. I'm busting my butt. I'm doing so many things behind the curtain that you guys could never understand. And I try to give you some insight into that. So not only like, okay, my God is working for me. Like, he legitimately has a viable plan. He knows the outcome. He's been, and that's another thing, right? Time for you guys, it would be like playing Donkey Kong. Well, all humans on Earth are essentially in that video game. Donkey Kong can't jump out of the game, right? He would have to be created and then entered into the Mario game. But there has to be a user on the outside of the game in order to be able to do that. Well, that user is myself. And if you were to look at it where it was like myself, right? So me, Yahweh, before the flesh, right? Before, in spirit. So imagine, right? When I've talked about this before. So when there was nothing, and then only a self-narrating voice, and then that voice creates. So if I then create a body as a tool for me to use this body as a tool, now I have a physical representation of the things that I'm going to work in the cosmos. Well, my original form, right? If we're looking at hard, fast, scientific fact, well, my one of my very first forms would have been the equivalent of trillions the size of the largest suns in the galaxy, right? So when you have that, and then you have to take a travel size, right? So it'd be like having all your stuff at home, and then you're going to go away for the weekend. Well, you're not going to pack up your couch. You're not packing up your television. You're not packing up your rugs, your dishes, even though all those things could be used or will be used, needed in the place you're going. But the point is, right, you're relying on those amenities to be at the location you're going. So as a creator, first I had to create myself. Like, I don't understand why that gets humanity so caught up, right? Probably because, you guys are all obviously on the receiving end of these things. So first I had to create myself, and then from myself, right, purpose driven. Well, okay, basically don't want to be this trillions of miles large and wide, like all these things, right? So then you got to understand like size. And then this is where essentially like adaptive learning comes into play. And then, like I've also stated before, it's so much how human beings will store memories in your flesh brain, but you'll also store memories on a hard drive externally from you, but you're able to tap into those things and then go, hey, I can recall this memory of my children when they were young, or I can recall that memory at vacation. So I'm not able to fit the entire universe in a human vessel, right? Just like a human in all of its glory would be unable to be properly translated into an ant, right? You would be missing some stuff being a human going into an ant, right? You'd be stepping down. So, in essence, you would have to have what the ant has to be as an ant, is what I'm saying. So, that's why, right, when I'm occupying my body, I have like my to-go travels case, right? I have everything I need, but I also have in there in this body all my memories, right? All my experiences, and then that also serves the purpose of knowing what's dangerous, what's not dangerous, being able to weigh the checks and balances. You hear this is good. Well, I need to know, why is this good? Oh, I tried this. This is actually not good. This goes on the not good list. Wouldn't be able to do that if I wasn't able to inhabit the actual specimen that I'm helping. And to give it more purpose, right? That's when we're talking about sharing in the wealth. So I've told people this a lot of times, I like to give power away to the proper people. And that's where that trust, that solidarity, that sovereignness comes in. And if humanity could legitimately learn to, decipher truth, know truth, and be able to shed away all the impiety, all the unrighteousness, and come to terms with where and what humanity has become. And to be honest, right, if you want to get angry at your own species. Get angry at the adversary because he left you guys half baked, most of you. And that's another thing, even the RH negatives, right? Like, this is not some celebratory thing for you guys. If anything, it should be a much stronger warning to the negatives, because that means that unlike the positives that have an opportunity for saving through salvation, through the blood covenant, which again, they're gonna get that transfusion, right? They'll get that blood transfusion, the translation of heart into the kingdom. That's kind of a part of your saving package deal. So then they would be absolutely like with you guys. What the bad part is, again, is most of the negatives right now, and have always been, all the gifts and tools you guys have, you use it to get shit over on humanity. Right? You charge $75 an hour in your little psychic shop. Right? You guys extort the human species just as much as these impious governments, just as much as the Hamas terrorists. It's just a blanket. And you guys, right, are closer to the fallen angels than almost anybody, because you guys, you eat like a human, you poop like one, you smell like one, you barely brush your teeth like one, but at the end of the day, you possess the hardware. And if you had any shade of piety or righteousness in you, then you would have known your gifts from birth, and you would have felt your purpose from heaven. You would have felt the calling, and you would have pursued righteous things. 8 out of 10 of you have not done that, right? That's why 8 out of 10 of you will be either thrown into the lake of fire, depending on how badly you've transgressed and how far undone we can't do you, or you're not going to be allowed into the heavenly realms, right? Because your ego, you're too stubborn. You know, you're like, I'm a little god too. Piss off. It's like, okay, but at that same time, that's the equivalent of saying you are a double A battery, right? So you're like the Baghdad battery. It's only good for maybe a little bit of metal plating, gold plating. That's it. You are not going to use a Baghdad battery and going and starting up a D10 dozer. Like, it's not happening ever. Not in a billion years is it going to happen. That's what being a negative in today's time would mean. Congratulations, you're a Baghdad battery. Like, you can do a little bit of astral travel, but again, all that's whimsy, and none of it's permanent unless you follow the commandments, accept righteousness, make your agreement covenants with me, the heavenlies, and then again, you find a purpose that is going to be working the good for the kingdom. So, what would a good purpose, if you were like this? What does a good purpose look like? Let's say you have that knack for going into meditation and then finding that peace, and then you start to see things in the future, or you start to, you know, tap into, if you will, the conversations in heaven, or things like that. Well, then you could help others with your gift, right? Not extort them. So whenever you're using your gift, right, it's never something you should run as a business, right? It's a purpose. And I'm not saying donations, you can of course take donations, but it's not something you want to force. And again, the donation thing is temporary, because New Earth, there is not going to be a money system. Like, again, if we were looking back in human history and we were to talk about the relevance of an outhouse when compared to the modern day toilet. So what you guys sound like to me is you're all concerned about the outhouse, and does it stink? Are there bugs in the outhouse? And I'm trying to tell you, there is no outhouse where we're going. If people have only ever known the outhouse, they would even look at that and go, so you're going to crap in your house? Then they get a bad taste. They get all haughty and they get that face. Like, I hate that face. I want to rip it off. But they get that face. And it's like, you know, if I were to go and use one of your media examples, Back to the Future is a great one. So you have Doc Emmett Brown. He's back into the Wild West. And, you know, he's enjoying life, right? He wanted to get out of the future. He wanted to go into the past. He wanted to live a nice, quiet life in the ranches of this, you know, the southwestern United States. Well, he has a couple drinks. Or actually, I don't even think he had a drink in the movie. I think he didn't even drink a sip. But he's telling out the whole bar, you know, he's like, where I'm from, there's this and there's that and there's cars, and the people in the bar not only are laughing, but they are knee slap laughing. They're like, this guy is saying there ain't going to be horses. Like, what is wrong with him? He is crazy, right? Why? He was only crazy because of the information they knew where they were at in history, right? Those same people, if they were born 80 years later would have been purchasing a car and driving down the road in it, and guess what? They'd still be just as dumb and haughty if someone then, say it was 1920, and then someone's like, we're going to have these Lear jets, we're going to have helicopters, we're going to have missiles that can reach around the whole world, we're going to have space stations, like back then people would be like, what is this guy talking about, right? Like he's talking about some sci-fi magazine stuff. In conclusion of this subject is nothing within your imagination is actually fruitless. So there's another morsel for your mind to suck on. So it's a contained system. Not one human could actually have an original thought that has not already been concepted from above. Even as whimsical and as fantasia as you could make it, truly, you cannot have an original thought. Right? That would be like the bird trying to have an original thought. The bird is capable getting worms, building a nest, laying eggs, flying, perching, scavenging. There's not really a whole lot outside the bird's purview, right, that it even cares about or would even think about because it's a bird. As haughty as human beings think they are about themselves, right, the same thing goes for you guys. So when you are essentially taking information that's already known, you're just trying to shuffle it in the proper organization, like really. And that's another thing, imagine the stories you tell are like ingredients that you're trying to put in the proper place, the proper order, and the proper time. Because if we're making a meatloaf, but we forget the step to bake it, unedible. You might go, but that's only one step. One tiny little step we didn't do. Well, that's a pretty damn big step. Thus is also the problem and the solution with mankind. So we don't want to cut the steps, which is why we want to be true to the commandments. We want to be true to righteousness. We want to make sure that the inner being is on search and on purpose for obtaining that eternal spirit, making that relationship, and then preparing for that next step. Because that's another thing, right? Imagine you went to college for, I don't even know, 6 to 8 years, right, to become a doctor. And then as soon as you get out, you're an absolute worthless doctor. You didn't learn anything. So it's like, so what the hell was that education for? So I'd like people to have that opportunity here on earth because we obviously want to make any and all situations turn to good one way or the other, right? So we take bad things and we figure out how to change them to good or somehow. But anyway, all right, we're going to take 5 and reconvene in a moment. And we're back. All right, so another topic of interest was like just in general how things are done. And right now, and not only in the world, but remember, everything has been boiled down to money-making schemes and unrighteousness, right? Because the evil seed cannot see evil. Like the light was shown in the darkness, and the darkness recognizes it not. So human beings requiring a place to live, number one, should take the money-making aspect of housing humanity off the table, number one. So this is really going to piss off a lot of realtors. Too bad. There should be zero commission to be made in property. There should be absolutely no investor type of situations where they pick up a property, they flip it for more money. That you're exploiting a housing game, and then you're raising rates. Again, this is talking about a very short term because in New Earth State, we're not going to have those issues, but we have them now. And for example, if you are a person seeking a residence and you put the offer on the house of what the asking offer is, and then an investor comes in behind you and offers $10,000 less, but they get the property, that is a no-no. That's an unrighteous. That should be against the law because you are using money to influence a situation, A. B, you are muscling out normal people, right, who are scraping dimes and dollars trying to save their money, get that house, put down the payment, and then yet they're fighting with these investors who don't give a shit. They've got all the money they want, all the means they need, and there's nothing stopping them. In fact, right, the system is made for these people to continue exploiting the housing market, to continue exploiting the weaknesses of those who do not have money like the others. And that is another thing that gets me enraged, right? So people might even say, well, yeah, you despise rich people. Sometimes, in some ways, I absolutely do. Because one, I see the ability for someone to do a lot, but they don't. I see people that have way more than they need and still pursue more. I see people that could care less about picking up that property that was going to go towards, a father and his daughter who really needed the property for his small business, for his daughter's ability to get to and from work better. Like all these things that mean so much more to the individual than it would a company, a conglomerate, a corporation, a money making beast. So that'll be one of my next judgments I throw, is going to be against those types of systems. So those who turn knobs and pull levers, if you want to get ahead of the curve, I suggest that's where you start. Because one of my big priorities, massive prerogative, is nobody in heaven goes without a home. And nobody on earth should go without a home. Because that is a part of being a brother on earth, right? We, and I say we because I'm down here right now. So I am in with you guys to a certain extent. You know, these problems will not be solved by billionaires. They're going to be solved by the common man, and then essentially without saying it but saying it, I'm going to have to break the hands and the feet and the minds of all those who work these systems for the benefit of gain, right? And again, it's just taking greed to the next level. Let's look at the NFL, for example. 20 years ago, you'd be hard pressed to turn on the regular cable and you're surfing and you'd find every stinking football game there is, right? And then most people were kind of like, well, I wanted to watch this movie and the stupid game's on. Well, not only did they make a ton of money then, but now what they used to make the most money on, right, was the commercials, the ads, the viewership, and then the, paraphernalia that's being sold, by the leagues. Well, that's not greedy enough. So now we're going to wrap it up into networks that require you to have a $70 a month subscription to watch people throw the ball, right? You are then flexing muscle against another part of society. This part of society, right? They indulge in sports like that primarily because they're blue collar. They work a lot of blue collar type jobs and some white collar, but that's the main home base, right? And then you're flexing your financial muscle, saying again, you can't have unless you pay. It's unrighteous. And look, I told you, my wife is a football fan, so I've kind of left that section alone for the most part, but it's also not immune to when I go to start breaking those hands. And I don't mean that in any way like harmful to the players. I typically look at all the players in professional sports. I look upon them kind of with pity because I see so many gentlemen, right, that they are talented and in so many ways, right? They are legitimately within purpose. Like these guys, their mind works in a certain way that makes them really, really good at what they do, and it can be impressive to watch, right? Like there's nothing wrong with that. But again, when it comes down to putting a monetary price on someone's head, it can blow up their ego. It can make them essentially feel out of touch, right, with the common people in which they too serve, right? Because they're practicing all week, they're busting their ass to put on a good show, right, for all the viewers. And so through greed, a good fraction of those viewers are not witnessing the game, which, again, it's now hurting your viewers because you want to then push it further and further away. You want to push the carrot further and further away to extort more money, more money, more money, more money. Like, I'm about to take the money and I'm about to burn every dollar. I'm about to break every bank. I'm about to put a sinkhole under every money operation, period. I didn't do that and haven't done that yet because that would sink the world into a level of chaos that could become very unstable and very deadly. So it's a bit of a process. And right now you have your boy Trump, right? Well, he's already got his sights on, Canada. We changed the Gulf of Mexico. I guess now America wants to have a stake in Gaza. I want to see, any and all areas be good. Whether it's the Gaza Strip being rebuilt, whether it's, um, you know, whatever. I don't want to ever have or ever see, any place as a destitution. But these places of destitution, right? It's because the weak are succumbing to the strong, but the strong are not strong in spirit, righteousness, or mind, or any of the good places. They're all strong in the wrong ways, right? Like Iran. Iran is the center hub trying to fund all these terrorist groups because they're absolutely, in spirit and truth and heart and soul and seed in all ways, like they do not like my chosen people. And at the moment, I don't like my chosen people. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not going to get reconciled with Israel, real Israel. And I'm not, you know what I mean? I'm just trying to say this. I'm not pointing to the fact that I'm not going to be reconciling, as I will at some point. It's just who will be getting reconciled. Um, because I'll be damned is at this point, I'm going to have primitive human beings with this tribal mindset that it's like, on one side of the gauge, you guys think you're all high and mighty because you're modern, because you got a bunch of plastics and a bunch of shit that you can manufacture that breaks within 3 years. It's another thing, right? I had to buy a TV recently because it's only, 2 years old, and the stupid thing already died. Now, regardless of my interference with electronics, 2 years for a new TV is pretty damn low. But again, that goes back to make it bigger so they buy it. But keep them in the cycle, right? Keep them returning customers. Like my wife made a joke saying there's probably a setting every 2 years the TV just starts to break down, so you're forced to go out and buy a new one. It's not too far from the truth. Point is, as the human species has actually digressed and progressed downward, the haughtiness has actually increased. The pride has increased. All because you've made shiny cars that move, so you think you're more powerful on the road. You look around you and you see your concrete jungles, and it makes you feel safe and secure. I'm here to tell you, when I decide to blow a big one, and by a big one, I'm talking super volcano, there's not one house, not one business, not one car, not one road, not one field, not one anything that is going to stand up to the power of a volcano. I don't care, right? Now, imagine your entire planet, good days or bad days, is dependent upon my mood. I have a bad day, lava begins to flow. I have a good day, the sun shines, right? I have a really bad day, the solar flares are going to begin to interrupt the electronic equipment, start frying your grid, and as soon as I do that, you guys are just sending shit right back up there before I can even finish that. It's also why your crap blows up before you leave the firmament. Because again, we're not taking proper channels. We're not praying. We're not intercessing about these things. We're not roping me in on the conversation. And that's the end of the day, too. I don't give a you know what if not one person other than my direct family and those that I've worked with, directly, because all of them can tell you without a doubt, I am who I say I am, right? I've proven that many, many times over to the point that they're very, very comfortable accepting that fact and moving forward. And guess what? When they have and they do, they begin to step into a whole new existence. Things that were unhealable are now healed. Situations that were absolutely derelict have now blossomed. Dreams and ambitions that were once so far away that they could only think of it would have to have happened in another lifetime. Those things have came within a matter of weeks. That's because you're lining up with what I'm giving you. So if I'm the distributor and I'm trying to pour this stuff into people, places, and things and situations, and all I'm asking humanity do is align your cup with what I'm trying to pour out. By your stubbornness, by your ego, by your derelict minds, and your constant rebellion. Like, I'll accept God, but not you. I'll accept Yahweh, but he's not you. Or I'll accept Jesus, but it's not Yeshua. Or I'll accept Yeshua, but that's not a part of you. Like, you guys will go in circles like the dog eating their tail. When I'm simply saying, hold your cup where I'm pouring. Just shut up. Hold your cup where I'm pouring. Then take a sip. Now you judge your situation, and now see me who I really am. Come upstairs and witness for yourself. But then when you do, so this is that give and take. So when you do, now you must become a witness. See, it's funny because there's so many people on planet Earth that want to talk and shout about heaven and God and glory and eternal life and all this and that and the other. 95% of them don't believe it. They don't. They only believe it as a sense of an anchoring, where that if they didn't believe it, then they would feel they have no actual feet to the flames to be good. So they're having to use that as their own rod, right, to keep them good. Whereas when you have someone who has a spirit, right, they have not only the hardware, but then they get the software that I give them. So then they essentially can take up residency where they belong, right, into the realms, into heaven. And then they can look down upon the earth themselves and see truly, like, damn, okay, like it's basically an upside down ant farm. And like everybody down there is so busy with this microscopic rights, wrongs, like this and that's, and they all get it wrong. So they all just are out of purpose. They're just like the bees that have no hive. They're the squirrel without a nut. They're a bird without wings. They're a worm without dirt. They're a fish without water. They are essentially the abomination. And the few, very few that are not abominations are having to contend with walking out the front door, everything's unrighteous. You talk to this person, they are unrighteous in one way or another. Everything you do, you go out to eat, you go for entertainment, you go to the store, you do anything you do, right? Those individuals that are righteous, they have the hardware, they have a spirit, they're living in hell. They're living in hell because they're like I could literally walk through, life in righteousness and goodness and like do good for the world, like all these things. And then you're contending with essentially the demonic seed. But anyway, all right. I think we're going to lop that off here and we'll see what the rest of the day brings.